If you're listening to this video, hopefully you have listened to and have a good sense for the psychological level video that came before it. This inquiry will deepen and expand what we have worked on, and if you don't feel like you have some insight or clarity regarding that first stage, I would suggest you work more with it before going on to this one. It is important that you are ready to inquire about wants on the non-dual level before you start doing it. If you're not ready, it won't really do anything for you. So really discern if you are ready for this, or if there is still a need to go deeper into the foundational fetters first. Take a moment to get comfortable, settle in, take a few deep breaths, and get ready to look honestly and thoroughly into your assumed reality. Just like we did in the first inquiry, bring to mind something that you still feel you want. It can be a small thing, like to go for a run, or a big thing, like changing your job. Do you still feel how life is going to be improved when you finally have whatever it is you want? What in your direct experience, sitting here right now, is giving you the feeling that something in your life is going to be improved or even can be improved? How do you know that life actually will be better with this thing or event added to it? If you've been able to activate the feeling of contentment that is present in the moment, why does that insight go away and become replaced with a mind-created want? See where you're sitting right now, in the present, without the object of your desire, and how do you feel in and around the body? Take stock of your general mood. How does the body feel? Your feet, your bum, the back of your body, your jaw. Can you make a snapshot of your current state? Good. Now picture yourself in a very specific future moment when you are completely satisfied and fulfilled after having acquired the longed for thing. Again, take stock of what is currently being felt in the body and the mind, while still imagining that you have what you really want. And now see if you can find in your direct experience the link between these two states. So you have the state of dissatisfaction in your perception of reality right now, and at the same time, the state of happiness and expansiveness in the projected future. How is it that you know that there will be any different experience when you get what you think you want? Can you find any way that this is known other than that it's a thought that was repeated over and over until it became a very solid belief every time you imagine a future with your want? Can you see into the future, or is all the imagination about the future just a thought? Do you really know what's going to happen in the next minute or the next year? Do you feel confident in predicting winning lottery numbers? If not, that might be a clue to the limits of our predictive powers and how much trust you should place in your assumptions about how life will be for you at some later date. So if you can't predict the future, how do you truly know that your fantasy about what will happen when you have got your want is true at all? Take a deep breath. If you really look into it right now, do you see that all of your thoughts are like this? But for various reasons, some of them seem more believable or harder to question than others. Acknowledging that is a good clue that you should be particularly suspicious about that type of thought. The more true and unquestionable those thoughts are, the more they should be questioned. There are some deep hooks into them needing to be true to keep you from having to question something about your worldview and, at the core, your self view. Now, instead of imagining the future and the implications on your life, we're going to move further and look into the belief itself. This can take a bit of a shift of perspective. If you feel like you are completely intertwined with the thoughts, then this can be quite difficult. This is also why this sort of inquiry is most effective after having seen through the illusion of a separate thinking self, what we refer to as the first fetter. If you have not seen through the foundational fetters yet, I would recommend you to stop the inquiry now and go back to the curriculum and the previous inquiry. The reason is that even with seeing through self, it can take practice to pull yourself up from the maze you are stuck in and gain that oversight you have from the fifth floor view. And from that non judgmental place, with curiosity, just observe the thoughts. Let's see if we can do that now together. Breathe and see if you can notice the thought with the same curious detachment as if it was a scene from a movie you were watching. To do this, it might help to take a few more deep breaths and allow any attachment to the experience to relax. It might feel a bit like an unhooking or like you're shrugging off a cloak, but ultimately, it is a very gentle detaching from thought that you will recognize when it happens, even though it normally feels different for everyone. Likewise, everyone is different regarding how thoughts show up for them. So you might see this belief of a better future as a visual image or a stream of visual images portraying the events yet to be seen. Or you might have auditory thoughts, hearing a discussion or maybe a monologue about the outcomes of acquisition. You might see it all written in text, or you might have a combination of all three, or maybe even something completely unique. How you think does not matter. What matters is your relationship to the thoughts and the detached curiosity you can use to approach the thoughts. So breathe deeply again, and now get back to the thoughts about how the thing that you want will improve the future. Observe how the thoughts about your belief conclude that you know how the future can be improved. Looking into the conclusion that your situation will be able to improve in the future is the root of what your belief is about. Whether it's a new car, a new relationship, a baby, or a hot dog, there is an implication that something about your experience will be able to improve, and that this is the thing which has the power to make it happen. If I ask you, can anything ever improve? Notice the immediate onslaught of thoughts arguing that all the things in your life surely can be better than they are now. But is that really true? In fact, at this moment, that is only a hypothetical belief. You could argue that you walk 10 miles back and forth to work every day, so a car would really improve your life. And on paper, that sounds perfectly reasonable. But we don't know if you will get that car, have an accident the first time you drive it, and end up paralyzed for the rest of your life. This is an extreme example, but it is to point to the fact that we never, ever, ever know anything for certain. We do not know what the consequences will be of any action. But we enjoy the playground of the mind where we pick and choose and assume we can construct a perfect plan to get what we want. On top of that, we also construct a belief that this thing we want will for sure secure our utmost happiness and safety, and at the core of it, it will ensure our eternal existence. But of course, you know it's all nonsense. You see clearly that it is all just mind-created fantasies, and yet sometimes what we plan to do does work out for a while. So we get cocky and convince ourselves that we actually can predict the future. But I would like for you to begin to notice how often your plans actually need to change. Or begin to notice how the plans sometimes get completely subverted by the tides of an unpredictable life. Okay, take a deep breath. Try to bring back the idea that something you want will be able to improve your life in the future. Now, ask yourself, who exactly is it? Who is the one who is going to benefit in the future? Where is that you? Can you find that you right here? If you can't, isn't that you just another thought? Who exactly is the you who is going to be able to improve? If you've already seen through self, this might seem like an obvious question, but notice if there are still some subtle layers of impressions that seem to imply a timeline, where some undefined thing in some way is going to be benefiting from any of your current efforts. Bizarre, isn't it? You know there is not a you, and yet there's a lingering belief that it matters that something needs to be in a certain way in the future, and that the non-you has any ability to shape that. It is really strange. If you have not seen through self yet, this is your call to look in your direct experience to find what seems like a consistent, lasting, observing, acting self. For the purpose of this exercise, feel what feels like you right now. It might be somewhere in the body, or in your thoughts, or a combination of them. Pick up your hand and point to you. Where did you point? Feel into that spot and see what it feels like. Make a mental note of it. Now, see if you can break it down into either specific felt sensations, or mental images, or other types of thoughts. Does it persist or does it start to disperse a bit? All right, let's go back to your belief. Think about how much better your life can be with that particular want. If you hear the thought as an audible sentence, does it sound like you're talking to someone? We often say, I'm talking to myself. This is so common that it's completely taken for granted and seems perfectly normal. But have you ever stopped to consider how perplexing this is? Who is talking and to whom? If there is a part of you who knows that you will be better off in the future with this want, why does it need to convince itself? Who is it trying to persuade? Do you see the duality inherent in this sort of self-talk? Again, it is something everyone does, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a fruitful ground for exploration. When you're explaining to yourself why you really need to have this want so that your life really will improve in the future, try to find who is hearing and receiving the thoughts. And if you are explaining to me, just know that I can't hear you. But that might not stop you from trying to explain. So, who is hearing? Who is listening? Okay. Remember how a few moments ago I asked you to make a mental note of what it felt like to be you? I would like for you to check in with that now. Is that feeling of what it is to be you still there? Did the feeling change at all? Does it feel like you are still the exact same person that you were a few minutes ago? Where did you tune into to find that out? Does it feel like that self has moved in time at all? Does it feel like you're currently living in a future? Where is the person who first tuned in to the sense of self? Can you find them now? Did they die? Did they disappear? So, what is going to happen to this feeling of self in another few minutes? Take a deep breath. Let's return to the belief again. Do you know how you first created and bought into this thought that what you want will improve something in the future? Did someone tell it to you? Did you intentionally decide that you needed to create a new thought that was going to be the driver for your life? Are there any remnants of its origin, like the cosmic radiation of the Big Bang? Can you sense any history of this belief? Does it appear fresh and new spontaneously every time it comes up? Or does it have hooks into something old and familiar? The next time you become aware of it, see if you notice any tendrils creeping back into some findable past. Or does it simply arise as a thought, popping newly into existence and winking back out moments later? Did you create the thought? Did you choose when it popped up? Can you actually initiate a thought? Or do you only become aware of it after it has arisen? Can you ever predict when or what the next thought will be? Here's a fun exercise to prove this point. I want you to breathe deeply and pay attention to the space where thoughts tend to appear. Now watch and wait, being very vigilant and observing. I want you to think of 3 movies. Did they pop to mind? Did you see how they were chosen? Did it feel like you chose them? You might have heard the names of the movies appear or saw clips from them. You might have even heard yourself choosing a title and deciding for some other reason to pick a better title. But did you recognize that none of that was you? The names simply appeared, and even all of the seeming back and forth and decision making was automatically happening. Let's try it again. This time think of 3 book titles. Did you notice anything different that time? Did you notice any difference between the thinker and the thoughts? Did there seem to be some separation now? At this point, we have seen that beliefs are nothing but thoughts, that thoughts are spontaneously, impersonally arising creations of the subconscious, and that they are in no way reliable in terms of their connection to the seemingly real world. So now let's look at the feeling of wanting. Pick something else that sounds good to you. Maybe a food, sex, checking social media, or watching TV. Whatever makes you feel like you could go for some of that right now. Get a clear image of the thing you want and feel what is happening in the body at this moment. Did something change? Is there any tension, buzzing, or perhaps something like a magnetic pull? Where exactly is it appearing? Get as clear on this as possible. Does this tension feel uncomfortable? Does it seem like you are in a dynamic place that wants to change? If so, this is the gap. The gap is a place where, by definition, it is uncomfortable for you to be. However, if you find it so uncomfortable that you cannot stay with the sensations, but instead springboard right into some sort of reaction, you should probably try a less charged want to investigate it first. So see if you can sit with this discomfort for a bit. Do you need to do something to distract yourself and stop feeling it? Do you need to escape from the gap? Or can you bear it for a little while longer? Good. Now let's look for any connection from the initial thought about the want you would like to have right now and these sensations that you are feeling in the body. In your actual experience, not in your thoughts, but in your experience right now, can you find a direct connection between the thoughts of wants and the sensations you are feeling in the body? Is there a physical thread or a link or a trigger or a switch or anything else that could connect these two things, the thought and the physical sensation, in your actual experience? Great. Now, continue sitting in the gap, feeling the sensation that seems to be pulling you to do something. If you notice that the body is moving or fidgeting or thoughts are arising, you have jumped over the gap and are now reacting. This is what we assume to be aversion or not wanting, but we're investigating wanting right now. So go back to the dynamically icky sensation. And just like we looked for a link between the first thought and this bodily sensation, now we're going to see if there is any connection between this icky sensation and the need to have the cigarette or candy bar or whatever it was you wanted. Can you find again in the direct experience, not in the thought, if there is any reason to reach out for that wanted item? How would it in any way connect with or change this bodily sensation? Other than that, it would distract your attention away from feeling it. Really look for that connection like you were looking for something you lost. Can you find anything? Not finding is the key here. We do this exercise over and over with different cravings to realize that there is no reason that we absolutely need to have the want just because a thought about it arises. While you're sitting in the gap, do you notice how diverting to thoughts takes you out of the body? Do you lose touch with how it feels? Can you see what the advantages are of going into thought and leaving your body multiple times throughout the day? This is how you are constantly bypassing the feelings in the body in order to keep from feeling those uncomfortable undercurrents that are constantly popping up and shaping your reactions and behaviors throughout your life. Do you see that there is no connection between thoughts and the necessity of action? Is the craving or want anything but another thought? Does that thought actually connect to anything at all in the world outside of your mental experience? We're almost done with this part, but not quite. Going back to the belief that you can and should improve or make your life better in the future, do you feel a sense of attachment to that belief? If I ask you to let it go, to let go of your wants, to release the craving right now, do you feel a sense of resistance? What is that resistance like? Does it feel similar in some way to the icky sensation of sitting in the gap? If you find that there is an attachment to the thought of the want, just notice that it is serving a purpose for you, and that the reason why it is difficult to let go of it is because there is an assumption that it's there for your benefit. You have an assumption that without it, life is going to go in some way awry. So again, sit in the gap and ask yourself, can I be in a body where I release the belief that it is possible for me to improve my future? Can you just be with that without doing anything about it? Can you be in a body when the beliefs that you should be creating a more comfortable future for yourself are released? Can you be in a body where any thought about any wants are acknowledged to be completely baseless and untrue? Take a deep breath. Well done. We are about to finish, and I would recommend you to do this inquiry again and again before moving on to the next level. Take time in your everyday life to stop whenever you catch yourself in a want. Do this non-dual inquiry and look into if there is any connection from the thought about a future that can be improved and the bodily sensation that is being experienced right now. The more you practice inquiry in your everyday life, the more it will become an integrated part of you. The more you dismantle the content of a thought from your perceived reality, the more clearly you will see how things actually are. The more you look into how a want is just a diversion from what is, and nothing but a delusion of a fantasy future, the less potent the thought of a want will become. Take one last deep breath and open your eyes.